Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm Nathan Shields, and today I've got a couple of past coaching clients, PT owners from Albuquerque, Susan Halbig and Karen Pettine of ABQ Scoliosis and Spine Therapy. I'm really excited to bring them on because they serve a particular niche of patients. They've got a partnership. They're mothers and done a lot of great work and had a lot of incredible growth over the past year. So I wanted to really highlight a number of those things. But before we get into it, Karen and Susan, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We're really excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into this. Tell us a little bit about your story. How did you guys get together? You're in Albuquerque. What made you guys get together and decide to become partners in a PT clinic?
Yeah, so it's really serendipitous. We have our firstborn children 8 days apart. So we were both on maternity leave from our jobs as staff physical therapists with one of the hospital systems here in town. And we live fairly close together. We didn't really know each other at the time, but on our maternity leave, we would take walks around the park and we just kind of connected and said, you have a teeny tiny baby, so do I. And it turns out we're both physical therapists. We just kind of struck up a conversation and said, hey, we should start walking together. We're off right now. It would be nice just to hang out and have someone to talk to. And through those conversations, we realized that we had a passion for treating scoliosis, which is our niche area of practice. And that's not super common. And so we kind of took that idea and recognized there was a huge need in our state because there was really very limited options for the type of treatment that we wanted to offer in our state. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could create a clinic that would serve our community and meet those needs of these people? And we said, let's just do it. And it was really kind of in the moment, a decision that we just both were like, yeah, let's do it. And I think we both went home that night, talked it over with our families, and both of our husbands are super supportive. And they're like, absolutely, you guys should just do it, make it happen. And so that's really what started our journey. And over the course of the next few months, we put together our business plan, rented an office space, created a website, did all those things. I remember launching the website and thinking, if one person signs up or calls us, like, this is going to work. Let's see what happens if anyone's interested. Mm-hmm. And that same week, our first patient contacted us and was like, okay, this is going to work. We're going to do this. Right. And it just went from there.
Yeah. And how long ago was that?
That was in 2018, early 2019.
Oh, okay. So it's only been a few years now.
Yeah.
And so where are you at now? Tell us a little bit about your clinic at this point.
Yeah, so we started, just to kind of give a little history in terms of like what room we started in or space we started in and then continuing on. When Karen and I first got that office space, I think it was about 300 square feet. So it was really tiny. It was basically a closet that we shared. Yeah. So she would treat her patients in the morning, and then in the afternoon we'd do a switcheroo, and then I'd treat my patients. And then from there we moved to a little bit larger space, and that's when we brought in another therapist. Our first hire. We were in that space for 2 years, and that was right kind of when the pandemic started. And then just this past October, now we're in a larger space. It's about 4,000 square feet. And we now have 5 physical therapists, and we have 2 front desk staff and 2 massage therapists on staff.
Oh man, it's incredible to see so much growth in a few years like that. Number one, congratulations.
Thank you.
But number two, it's a question is, so you guys have niched down. Tell me a little bit about your specialty and the patient population that you treat.
Yeah, so our specialty is treating scoliosis. All of the therapists on our team now have been trained and certified in the Schroth method, which is probably the most well-researched method for treating scoliosis that is non-surgical. And that's something that we really value as kind of having a common language and common foundation at our practice. We primarily see patients with scoliosis, as you might imagine, across all ages, from young as 2 up into the 90s. So across the entire lifespan, male and female. And that is the bulk of our caseload, probably at least 50%, maybe a little bit higher at any given time. And then the other patients tend to just be more general orthopedic with an emphasis on spine. And that's kind of our mix. So by having that same shared background and training, it gives us kind of a unique lens that we view all of our patients with, actually, because it really applies to everyone, some of these treatment principles. And then we can offer a very specialized, very individualized approach for scoliosis treatment also.
So Karen, tell me about that. Most owners would say, we'll take all comers. I mean, whoever, we're pretty much trained, if you want it to be, coming through school as general orthopedic practitioners. We'll see anything from the toes to the cervical spine and T&J. But you guys decided to not only focus on spine patients, but also a particular method in treatment, the Schroth method, right? And so that might be counterintuitive to some owners that you would niche down so much that you might be, quote unquote, limiting yourselves. Did you ever have those kind of thoughts as you got started, Karen?
I think we were curious, I would say, kind of how many individuals we might be able to help and just kind of what the demand would be. But since we know 2 to 3% of the population has adolescent idiopathic scoliosis, a greater number into adulthood end up with different types of scoliosis, just doing the numbers on our population, even in our own area, I knew that we had a high number of people that would have this condition. And so that kind of helped justify, like, well, if there's, that many individuals who have scoliosis, obviously not all of them are coming to PT, but even if we got a fraction of them, that would still sustain a fairly large clinic and have a lot of room for growth. So just by kind of doing some of the numbers, we could see the potential. Plus, we knew that this was really just an area that had not been served. So we really felt like that would help us too. And then I think the other thing too is it's also important to know who we don't serve, because it makes us very identifiable. So people, if they have scoliosis and they're looking for a non-surgical approach, they find us and they know exactly what we do and who we do it for. And there's no confusion on that end. And in a way that almost makes it easier for people to find us, because there's not a question of, well, what is exactly that you do, or who do we treat, who's appropriate? It's like, oh, I have scoliosis, I should see you. And it's a very direct link, I guess, to us.
Mm-hmm. Susan, did you guys have any physician connections, relationships that you were planning to build off of, or was this something that you just opened up, found a space, and decided on these are the type of patients that we're going to see, and then sent that message out to physicians? Did you have any relations prior to opening up?
Yeah, so we actually did. And I think we did a little bit of both of that. But initially starting, I had worked 5 years at the hospital here in Albuquerque in the pediatric clinic and had a very close relationship with the orthopedic surgeons there. So they had known that I was trained in Schroth, and I was seeing a small handful of patients at Carrie Tingley for scoliosis. And when I left Carrie Tingley to exclusively work with Karen, they knew that I was the only Schroth therapist there and that I was leaving. So it was kind of nice because I had already had that connection. I know the orthotists that work there, that work with all the kids with their bracing. So I already kind of had that in place. So it was something that we could build off of just to kind of get us going initially. And quite a few patients followed me from Carrie Tingley to ABQ scoliosis and spine. So that was really nice. I think it was a kind of nice cushion for us.
For sure.
And then once we really got started, we have our director of business development. He really helped us with marketing on letting all of the other orthopedic surgeons in town, all the pain clinics know that we exist. So we did both.
Yeah, I got you. And so, Karen, when you open up this clinic, and now that you're into it a few years, there is also a mentality among PT owners that there's a lot of competition around. I would assume because of your niche, because of your specialty, you'd have a different view of competition, quote unquote. What would you say?
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, as PT owners of a practice, we should be helping each other out, and there are plenty of patients to go around. I don't feel like there's a scarcity of people to help. So I don't really have a scarcity mindset in general, but then specifically for our population, there is no competition. Every Schroth-trained physical therapist in the state is under our roof. So from that standpoint, there really is no one else better positioned to serve this population. But even so, I think we really value relationships with other clinics and working together. And there are so many more people to help than there are people who are trained and skilled as physical therapists to help them, if that makes sense. So right. I don't worry about a lack of patients.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of cool because, like I said, initially people would think that as you niche down that you're limiting the number of patients that you could see and that you're also limiting the size of your practice. Whereas what you're seeing is, you guys are an example of this, you've niched down to a point where you know exactly who your patient population is. And if you can serve a significant number of them and get that word out, then you can continue to expand because, like you said, that's 2 to 3% of the overall population. That's a huge number of people, right? And so you are able to then expand within that group. And there really isn't a lot of quote unquote competition like other PT owners might think of other PT clinics around them. So that's really cool because I know, and go ahead and share, what are some of your goals then with future growth for this particular niche?
Yeah, well, I think Susan and I have always thought that everyone with scoliosis should have access to a physical therapist who is trained in treating that condition because it really can be life-changing. And so we would like to reach all of the areas that don't have that service right now, which is quite a few. So I think we are just in the process of refining our systems and figuring out how we can do what we want to do in a way that is providing really high quality care and also in a way that allows us to be efficient and effective and profitable as a business too.
Right. Do you know of any other Schroth certified centers like yourself that are just solely focused on scoliosis and the spine in the country?
Yeah, there's a few. So a lot of Schroth therapists, when they initially start, they kind of start on an independent cash-based service. So they might kind of be in that same situation that Karen and I were in, where they have a small base, they, treat patients, cash pay. So there are a lot of therapists, and there's a directory that says where all of those therapists are located after they've been trained. There are some definitely bigger clinics, Vancouver, nationwide, internationally. They have these centers that are very focused on scoliosis. So it's nice because there's a few clinics that are about, 7 to 10 years ahead of us. And we can kind of see what they've done and kind of use them as a model, which has been really nice. But in the Southwest, we're the only ones.
Wow. Yeah, really impressive. And you guys started off working together, and it's really cool that recognized, obviously, you have some shared values and alignment simply because you were first-time mothers, children of the same age, right? You worked at the similar hospital facility. What do you think thus far in your partnership has made your partnership successful?
Oh gosh, so many things.
Right? That's exactly what I would have said first.
I mean, I think bottom line, every day, I think Karen and I have an immense sense of gratitude for each other because we know that we couldn't do it without the other one, considering that we have these parallel lives in our family. So I think what's nice is that we have an innate sense of just knowing what the other one is going through because our families are so similar. So yeah, I think what's nice is that we understand what we're going through both on the business side and on the family side. And I think as moms, we have this natural ability just to kind of pick up slack without even having to be told. I feel like, oh no, I think I'm slipping in this area. Karen is immediately there and has that support so that I can kind of take care of family stuff. And I think vice versa. So it's been this really nice, unspoken way of supporting each other.
It's been very natural, I would say, and it's just come very naturally to each of us to kind of find our own strengths. And while we have very similar values, I think we also have unique strengths, which make our partnership very complementary, so that we're not trying to do each other's job, so to speak, but that we also are, like Susan said, very willing to step in and help and support each other. And I think a lot of it's just, not all of the decision-making rests on one person's shoulders. And that makes it much less stressful from that standpoint too, because if there's something that needs to be decided, we have a person to bounce ideas off of. We have someone who we know and trust, who I can go, hey, I had this idea, or we have this issue. I was thinking maybe this is the best course of action. What do you think? And we can share and strategize. And it just makes the whole process way more fun too, because I have a great friend to work with and we have this kind of shared goal. And yeah, it's been just really, really easy. And it's because I think Susan is just so wonderful.
Aw. I know you guys, when you came to me to do some coaching, you had already seemingly had some clear delineation of responsibilities. Was that something that you started immediately communicated with from the very beginning, or understood fairly early on that, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I've seen and what I know about your business, is that, Karen, you're more of the more financial, business related, maybe even admin side, whereas Susan, you're more of the physical therapist, overseer. I mean, essentially early on, you were the clinic director and still might be in that, overseeing the production of the therapy. A conversation that you had early on and said, this is your lane, this is mine kind of thing?
I think it happened more naturally than that, just by us recognizing what we each like to do, what we were each good at doing, and then partially also necessity from different factors that played into the pandemic too. Right at the start, I was pregnant with my son, my second kid, and from some different health reasons, couldn't go into the office. I was on bed rest for a little while at the start and some different things. So that just kind of naturally meant, oh, well, I'll take care of all the things that can be done without being in the office and treating patients. Okay. And I'll do all these things, and you see patients and do those things. And we were already headed that direction, but I think in that moment that just kind of solidified that a little bit more. And then we realized that just worked and made sense, and we kept at it.
Got it.
Yeah. You know, another thing too is when we first opened the business, I think we maybe had the mindset that we both needed to do everything. Because I think we were both trying to be like, okay, well, we need to understand billing and we need to understand this and that. And we were both doing it. But then when that natural split happened, it really did make sense. Like, you know, we don't need to be double crossing and doing all of our work all of the time, because that just makes us less efficient. So it really was nice that natural split happened. And I think we just accomplished more afterwards.
What's your communication rhythm now? Do you have to be pretty diligent in setting aside time to make sure you guys communicate, or are you doing it on the fly?
I think what we do is, like, because we are mothers and we're mixing and crossing our worlds so frequently, we definitely do have set aside time. Like, we definitely meet once a week for at least a couple of hours just to talk everything out. But then I would say, on a daily basis, we're slacking each other or texting or all the time. So there's both.
And I'm assuming in those 2-hour meetings that you have each week, I'm assuming Karen's kind of updating you, Susan, and Susan, you're updating Karen a little bit to some extent. Is that kind of how that goes?
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of do a debrief of all the things that we've done the week before, things that we've each been working on that we want to share. And then we usually spend some time kind of talking about the vision and next steps and places we want to go. And then intermixed with that, we're chasing toddler and taking care of a newborn and doing all those things too. So it takes a couple hours to get all that done, but it's a fun time too.
Now, looking back, I mean, you're only 3 years into this. What would you have done differently starting up? Is there anything where you look back like, oh, you know what, probably should have done this, or we should have figured this out? Or do you feel like things have gone fairly well in that regard?
I think there's always things you can look back on and say, I would have done that better. I think there's a lot of learning that happened. So it's hard to say, you know, I don't think anyone has like a perfect path that they would have done everything perfectly. And we definitely couldn't say that either. I think some things where there was the most learning and places that were probably challenging for a while and places that still can be, learning and understanding insurance billing and figuring out how to get paid for the work that we're doing. I think as our team has grown, just working on the communication of having a bigger team and a bigger staff and making sure that kind of everyone's on the same page and we're unified around the same goals and that things are communicated in a way that is efficient but effective and kind of striking that balance. I think letting go and letting other people do things has been important too, because I think, and I know when we were working with you, one of the things that we were really working towards was trying to get a little bit more out of direct patient care and taking ourselves off the schedule. And that has made a big difference. And I think part of it is just a little bit of a mindset, at least for me, of feeling like if I'm not working really hard every second of the day, I must be slacking and things must not be getting done and I could do more. And just recognizing that, you know, maybe there's someone else who could come in and do that job, and that they can probably even do it better than I was doing it.
Right.
And then that'll free me up to do the things that I'm good at. We've been really fortunate to have some great hires. Like our front desk office manager is amazing, and she has done better at her job than I ever did when I was trying to do those things. And just like, oh, we should have definitely brought someone like that on sooner. That would have been a good move. So things like that. But, it's all part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Say this, both of you being mothers and 2 times over mothers, congratulations, first of all. And I haven't really highlighted this on the podcast in the past, but what would you say to other women who are trying to juggle really young families and considering possible PT ownership? What kind of advice would you give them? I'll start with you, Susan.
I mean, I think we're always hesitant to just be like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't do this because it's taking away from my family time, or you can get caught in this like going back and forth and then nothing happens. So I feel like Karen and I kind of just went for it. And then we said, well, we'll figure it out as we go. And we have. And I think out of necessity, we've had to ask the questions of not how are we going to do this, but who can we hire to help us do that? And we kind of figure it out as we go. So I would have hated to put our careers on hold because we thought that we couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that we just went for it and we just kind of made it happen. And, we hit snags along the way. And I think that's something that you just kind of take the time and you take a step back and you say, okay, where are my priorities? What needs to happen first, whether that's family or business? And one thing that Karen told me that sticks with me all the time is, and this was especially when I had a higher caseload of patients, is she just said, you know what, at the end of the day, we have a really great clinic. We have amazing therapists, and our patients can have any one of our therapists treat them. But at the end of the day, I am the only mom for my kids. So that's where I need to be able to prioritize. So whenever that happens, I just run those words through my head and I say, okay, this is what I need to do to game plan to get work responsibilities covered so that I can do this at home. So I think cool. So I think just in summation, go for it because you can make it happen. You just have to be creative. Yeah.
I was just going to say, what's also cool is you have 2 very supportive husbands that were like, yeah, you guys need to go do this. I'll help you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That has made a huge difference. But I think there's some really great networks of, female and mother-owned businesses out there and a lot of different business models and people making things work in a lot of different ways. So I would agree with Susan. Go for it. There's a way that will work. It might not be the way that we've done it, but if anyone is interested, I know there's a way. Mm-hmm. But I'm also an eternal optimist, so I always think that.
Yeah, I got you. As you're looking forward, do you have plans for growth and expansion? And whether that's in your clinics or with your families, who knows? I'm not saying. As someone who has 7 children, there's always room for growth, right? What are some of the things that you would want the listeners of the PT Owners Club podcast to know about how they should consider niche/specialty practices and the opportunity that lays before them based on your experience? What do you think, Karen?
Yeah, I think for us, it's been incredibly helpful. And I think kind of like I mentioned a little bit before, it makes us very referable so that our people in the community know who we are and what we do. And if you have a conversation with a physician or just a friend or family, you can really quickly tell them, oh, we treat people with scoliosis and that is what we do. And so then they know if someone has scoliosis, they should come see us. And it makes it a very easy referral as opposed to, wondering who might be the best provider or what different conditions we might treat or might not treat. There's not a lot of confusion around that. So I think if you can just make it very clear, whether it's we treat CrossFit athletes or we treat tennis players or we treat whoever it is, that you know how to make it very well known so that people can find you. Yeah. And that just takes a lot of the work out of the marketing, I think.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And what I found interesting is in working with you, and you mentioned it earlier, there are 50% of your patient load is focused on scoliosis care. The other 50% is orthopedic conditions related to the spine. But you also have provided in the past, and I think you still do, there's a pelvic floor component to it because that is an issue with people with scoliosis, right? So even though you've niched down quite a bit, there are offshoots of your specialty that allow you to expand, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the skill set that we have as trauma therapists, like Karen had mentioned earlier, we can apply to everyone, whether or not they have scoliosis or any kind of spine issue.
Okay.
And, there's research coming out every day, and, our body is connected in so many different ways, myofascially, vestibular. So really you can tie in anything. And that's where we see a lot of patients where maybe they initially come to us for scoliosis, but then they get a shoulder repair or, a total knee replacement down the road, and they come right back to us because we still have that skill set.
Oh, that's cool. And you're not turning those people away.
No.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, awesome. And I've noticed the same story. I have some friends in Florida, and I've interviewed Angie McGilvery in the past. Their clinic got destroyed by a hurricane, and they had an opportunity to open it up back again. And they said, and initially they were welcome to all comers prior to the hurricane. And now as they were opening up again, they thought, let's treat the people we want to treat. And she was a 30-year-old CrossFit athlete. And she said, that's who we're going to focus on. She and her husband decided that we're going to treat 30-year-old CrossFit athletes. And they've noticed the same thing as they've focused and niched down into a certain demographic of treatment. They now are seeing the offshoots of that. Well, the 30-year-old CrossFit athlete has children who are athletes, and of course they want them to come to the same physical therapy clinic, and other athletes are hearing about how great they are, not just female and not just 30-year-olds, right? And so they've grown and expanded, now treating a base of patients that they truly love and like treating. And I think that's where you guys, I don't know if that's necessarily, well, I know that's not your story, but you guys had a demographic of patients that you knew needed help, and you knew the way to treat them, and started from there, not really concerned about how that might be limiting. And so I think that's just an amazing part of your story, that it just happened naturally.
Yeah, it definitely did. And just, to give an example of being able to provide that care for the patients that we're really passionate about. We had a patient that came in, she has scoliosis. 3 months later, she was pregnant. So then we got to treat her throughout her entire pregnancy and then postpartum. So what's really cool is that we're able to treat people through every life stage, and their scoliosis is going to behave differently through every life stage. And we get to be there for that, which is really cool.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on a successful clinic, and wish you all the best in terms of your growth and expansion. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we take off, Karen?
Thank you again for what you did for us. I think you really helped provide a lot of insight and helped keep us on a path, and we're a sounding board, and just a lot of wisdom we gained from working with you. So that was really beneficial and an important part of allowing us to get from what we affectionately call our closet to our bigger clinic space and team of therapists.
Well, you guys were a great team. So it was really easy to work with you, because it was like one recommendation, you guys were off to the races. And so it was really easy to work. You guys have done great. Number one, congratulations on your clinic. Number two, congratulations on your successful PT ownership and motherhood responsibilities that you seem to be working really well together. And I really appreciate how you've prioritized things and keeping motherhood first. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Every day is an adventure.
Sure is.
That's right. Well, again, thanks for your time. If people wanted to learn a little bit more about ABQ, scoliosis, and spine therapy in Albuquerque, how would they do that?
Probably our website is the best place to find us, scoliosisabq.com. But we're on all the social medias, Scoliosis ABQ, also Facebook and Instagram. So yeah, probably start there would be the best spot.
All right.
But they can reach out to us directly too if you wanted to share emails or anything. You're welcome.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your experience today and being part of the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you again. It was fun.